Welcome to our final lesson exploring the character of Ralph in Golding's Lord of the Flies. Today we're focusing on his final characteristic, his remorse. Ralph's participation in the murder of his friend Simon and subsequent remorse almost drives him to madness. One of his coping mechanisms is to revert to an almost childlike state, a far cry from the mature and resilient leader that we see at the start of the novel. Finally, Ralph is remorseful over the crimes of humanity and the traumatic realization of the truth of man's nature. Let's begin. Gaining lucidity of thought after his feverish participation in Simon's murder, Ralph is presented as almost mad with guilt. This is clearly shown in Chapter 10 when Ralph has a breakdown while talking to Piggy.
Ralph! Stop laughing like that. Look, there ain't no need, Ralph. What's the others gonna think?
At last, Ralph stopped. He was shivering.
Piggy. Eh? That was Simon. You said that before. Piggy. Eh? That was murder.
Here, Ralph's emotional response of laughing seems deranged to both Piggy and the reader, suggesting that something has snapped inside of him. The laughing and shivering indicate Ralph's body's desperate attempts at dealing with the overwhelming guilt, fear, and terror he feels after realizing he took part in Simon's murder. This moment shows Ralph not just as a leader, but as a deeply remorseful human being grappling with the consequences of his actions. We see further symptoms of how Ralph deals with the weight of his crime in his regression from a mature and resilient leader into an almost childlike state. In Chapter 10, the narrator describes Ralph's state. Ralph continued to rock to and fro. This is followed by Ralph's own desperate admission.
I'm frightened. Of us. I want to go home. Oh God, I want to go home.
As the guilt overwhelms him, the reader is reminded that the stranded boys on the island, despite their attempts at creating a society, are essentially frightened children. Ralph's actions, rocking to and fro, evoke an image of a young child seeking comfort in self-soothing rhythmic motions, a stark contrast to the headstrong leader he was at the novel's opening. His plea to go home is representative of his yearning for the safety, structure, and the comfort of the societal norms that their makeshift homes and relationships on the island initially provided but failed to sustain. At this point in the story, we, as readers, feel both sympathy and pity for Ralph, who seems to lose stature, appearing smaller and more vulnerable than ever before. Through this emotional journey of Ralph's character, Golding subtly conveys the larger truth about the fragility of human-made constructs, of society and morality, which can be easily overwhelmed by fear and guilt. Finally, Golding presents Ralph as a character burdened with the collective guilt of all the boys on the island. His remorse and grief extend outwards and encompass the crimes of all humanity through his traumatic realization of the truth of man's nature. The sheer weight of this is encapsulated in the quotation, "Ralph wept for the end of innocence, the darkness of man's heart, and the fall through the air of the true, wise friend called Piggy." This emphasizes Ralph's overwhelming regret, remorse, guilt, and grief. The broad statement, "the end of innocence, the darkness of man's heart," reveals how deeply Ralph has been affected by their time on the island. However, Golding also specifically highlights Ralph's personal sorrow for his friend, Piggy, creating a haunting, sorrow-filled image. Ralph's remorse and grief are not constrained to his own actions, but span the entire spectrum of experiences and actions on the island, underscoring his profound sense of remorse and guilt. The novel is an allegorical fable about human greed and the conflict between group and individual interests, and Ralph's realization at its ending demonstrates how Golding's novel is a wider commentary about the true nature of man. Anagorasis is the moment in a story when a character makes a crucial realization about their true identity or the true nature of their circumstances. Here there is a sense of anagnorisis after Ralph and the others mistake Simon for the beast and beat him to death. Ralph realizes the gravity of what they have done and the truth about his own humanity and that of the other boys. Through Ralph's fall from grace, Golding seems to suggest that tenets of society, such as order, morality, are not innate to mankind, but rather things that are taught and instilled and easily destroyed. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson, students. We've explored Ralph's breakdown after Simon's murder, where he struggles to grapple with the consequences. We then highlighted his childlike regression from a mature leader to a childlike state and his desire to return home. Finally, we explored his overwhelming grief at the end of the text, symbolised by his tears for the end of Innocence and the loss of Piggy. These moments reveal Ralph's profound remorse and the novel's deeper themes about the fragility of morality. Remember to keep revising this lesson and see you next time.